Hey everyone, welcome to another video. Today we're going to talk about issue number 15 of X-Men Red, written by Al Ewing, but before we dive into the story, I want to say thank you for watching my videos and leaving great thoughtful comments down below to help the channel grow. Now with that said, a civil war has erupted on Arakko. Storm and her team have banded together alongside the Iraqi mutants who have embraced Storm's recent push for a more peaceful existence on Arakko. But the desire for a peaceful existence does not mean that those dedicated to the cause aren't willing to fight to defend their way of life. Meanwhile, Genesis, who in the spirit of the brutal survival of the fittest mentality that has previously prevailed among the Iraqi, has executed a hostile takeover of the Great Ring using the Annihilation Staff. With the leading council of Arakko now secured, Genesis has turned her attention to conquering the Iraqi people and crushing Storm's band of rebels. So with that said, this issue opens up with a dialogue from the Fisher King. And during this dialogue, we find out the prison the Fisher King was born in was called the Tower of Broken Thoughts. And at the age of 6 years old, he was sent to feed a psychic mutant who wasn't in control of his powers. Now this mutant went by the name Azaoth the Dark One, or also known as the Mind Ripper. And according to their conversation, the Mind Ripper can tear anyone's mind wide open while he flays his victims alive. But see, that wasn't all, for he can also cut away their past, their name, and everything that makes a person themselves. So with that said, we skip back to the current day with the Fisher King lost in his thoughts. Now, just to add some context to the story, we will get a rundown on the Fisher King's past during this issue. But see, his past already intrudes so often that it's a nice burden to bear for what he had gained. For Xylo has extended his being into his flesh, to preserve the history still in him, and add its tactics to his. So with that said, they are greater together than they are apart. But anyway, following that, the Fisher King breaks down the current state of the war, from troop movements to territories disputes. Because according to him, Argyre is long lost, but their western front is holding firm against attacks from that direction. The territories to the east of them are safe for now. To reach them by land, the forces of Arakko Prime have to pass between Iska's mountains and the Spirevile, where the Locusts of Tarn have established their own twisted realm of chaos. And speaking of Tarn Locusts, they haven't chosen either side for now in this civil war. That leaves the Autumn Continent mostly uncontested by either side due to it becoming dead land after Vulcan's rage. So to open a new front, Genesis has to attack by sea through Sabunar's Ocean, which was a route Genesis hadn't tried, so because she hadn't taken that route yet makes the Fisher King think that she is treading carefully with him. But now she'll push. And the place to push is Black King Bay and the river route to Lake Hellas. So at sunrise, everyone must be ready, for his gut says the seas will turn red with blood. And if he is right, then together they could win the day. Because tomorrow is the day they win back everything lost, or the day they all lose. So with the team preparing for battle, we skip over to yet another of the Fisher King's memories, but this time he is around 15 years old and dead set on taking Tarn's life. Because throughout the years he remained a blank spot and off Tarn's radar and taught himself how to take life just for this very moment. So with that out there, we see Tarn walking with the summoner and another of his soldiers talking about a situation that involves Solom. Now for those who don't know who Solom is, he is a mutant from Arakko with skin made from adamantium, and he also has a powerful healing factor similar to Wolverine's. So anyway, according to their conversation, Tarn forces managed to capture the mutant and is currently trying to extract his DNA. Now the reason why his DNA is so important in this situation is because Tarn needs to consume a mutant's DNA to steal their abilities. So with that said, Tarn's soldier brings up how converting this ability makes him look weak and is usually seen as a great insult for an Iraqi. But that is when Tarn states that he doesn't need the weapon, but rather he just wants it to study. So as they continued to speak, the Fisher King slowly sank into the shadows as he prepared to strike. But before he could launch his attack, a mysterious hand took him by the wrist. Now the reason why she did this was, because if the Fisher King had killed Tarn, then just another evil person would have replaced him. And in due time, he too would eventually be eliminated. So instead of wasting his life, Zora suggests the two of them try to change things from the shadow instead. So following that flashback, we transition over to Genesis forces on board a ship preparing to attack Storm's army. And during this conversation, we see Sabunar protesting Genesis's actions, for he believes their forces, as it stand, will be enough to win the day, and Genesis should have no need for the creatures of the deep, for Sabunar's children does not belong on land. But despite his protest, Genesis informs Sabuna that this is not a decision for the depths, because in war, all decisions are deferred to the dawn. So with that out there, she turns to Lycon and asks the Seat of Stalemate what he recommends. And to no one's surprise, he completely agrees with everything Genesis puts forward, for the staff is manipulating everything. So with that said, Ora Sereta, the witness, gives Satis Exotica legal permission to proceed. Which Satis Exotica does just that by cutting his hand with a blade and then dripping his blood into the sea below. Now one thing we have to know about his power is that his blood has the ability to enhance the receiver's abilities and strength by a lot. Now usually the Iraqi people look down on mutants with this kind of power, but in this situation, the power isn't given to mutants but rather to the creatures of the depth. Following Genesis setting her plan into motion, we transition over to the sword base above Mars with Storm having a conversation with a mutant on board. Now the nature of this interaction was to get additional intel on Genesis troop movements. And from what the eye in the sky could see, there is a few ships heading their way, and given the size of the force on board, it is nowhere near the size needed to win. So with Genesis forces heading their way, Storm states that she could create a tidal wave that is big enough to sink all the battleships. So right before she heads out to decimate Genesis's fleet, Sunspot points out a creature exiting the water. For the blood Satis Exotica spilled ended up creating a gigantic creature that was still mutating as it surfaced, hellbent on destroying Storm and her forces. So with Storm's attention switching to the beast at her doorstep, the Fisher King couldn't help but to get a bad feeling about this situation. For even the worm of Xylo within his body threaded through his bones and organs flex and writhe. For it felt a connection with this beast and their joint history. So as Xylo tried its hardest to warn the Fisher King, we then jump back into his memories with yet another flashback. Now in this memory, the Fisher King was 45 years old and currently holds the seat of nothing, but see he isn't alone, for Zora, the spirit of flames, holds the seat of nobody, and Sizia of the smoke holds the seat of nowhere. And at that present moment, they are meeting with Solom of the silver skin. Now the reason why they are meeting with him is because they need his help if they want any chance of success. Because in a week's time, Tarn the Uncarrying is making a trek to his vile colleges, but see, this time Annihilation is going with him to inspect his new abominations. And as extra protection, the horsemen will ride alongside with Iska for good measure. Now the reason why they all are traveling together is out of fear of the White Sword and his 100, because the 100 can die and be brought back as many times as Iska can win. So with all their enemies in one place, Zora believes this is too good to be true. So with this coming down to a vote, Zora votes to stand down, as her husband, the Fisher King, and her sister vote to attack. For they believe a chance like this may never show itself again. So with the decision made, the Fisher King states that Ora Sereta will be the first to die, because once he is gone and they are out of the law's shackles, the Great Ring can act. So with the opportunity open, the three came to Solom to ask for his aid, for this was the chance of a lifetime. Because with his help they may be able to pull it off. So with the Fisher King and his team heading off to battle, we fast forward back to the current day. And when we get there, we see the creature lumbering toward the Port of Prometheus. It was vast, slow, and ungainly, pretty much an object for blunt hands. Which was something that was hard to believe, for Genesis created the 10 towers, and she rebuilt Araco as a sleek machine of death, so for her to use a weapon as clumsy as this was unlike her. And see, the Fisher King wasn't the only one uneased by this, cause Xylo's worms squirmed within his heart. So as Storm takes to the air, no one else lifts a finger as she freezes the air in the upper atmosphere to the point where she creates a giant hailstone the size of the creature's skull. And with hurricane-type winds she brings the iceberg down, and straight through its head, killing it in an instant. But as the giant sea monster falls dead, the worms within Xylo coiled in his spine. Now merged as they are, he can only speak in warnings from his history and the Fisher King's own. So following that we get one last flashback into the Fisher King's memories, but this time we pick up after their assault on Tarn. And let's just say, things didn't go according to plans. For the Fisher King and his wife were chained to the wall, surrounded by not just the 4 horsemen, but also Genesis and the Annihilation Helm. Now the reason why they are there is to face the consequences of trying to rise up against them. And a part of their punishment was to bring in the Fisher King's 2 children, for the law doesn't restrict against age. For one must die and the other must live to learn the lesson and to ensure all is understood. So with that said, the Fisher King attempts to break free but to no success. So as he watched on in horror, Zora spoke up and stated that she would take it on herself. For she swore an oath a long time ago to keep her family safe by any means necessary, even if it meant her own death. So with Zora unwilling to break her oath, the horsemen before her immediately burned her down to the skeleton until there was nothing left behind. So with one dead, the Fisher King is now the one who must learn from this situation. So with the punishment issued, Genesis lets the Fisher King in on a secret. Now the Fisher King was under the impression that Solem gave them up, but he was wrong, because Genesis informs him that she wears the helm and she is also the one who whispers to the plants. And inside the Fisher King's gut was Flora. So within his body were her spies. So as they turn to leave, we see a young Iska looking at her father in disgrace, for in her eyes he was just a weakling. So with that traumatic memory coming to an end, the Fisher King snaps to reality and puts everything together, for the spy was inside the giant monster. So with no time to waste, the Fisher King yells to Roberto to burn the body, but unfortunately, they were too late. Now the seed in the fish's body grew faster than anyone thought possible and was as strong as diamond. For the gate of Okara was open. Now Krakoa and Arako can only grow gates half as potent, for this gate needs no answering gate to link with. Instead, it creates one at the destination. Now this magic feeds on spilled blood, and the fish monster had more than enough to do the job. So with them providing the blood, the gates opened to the Ivory Spire, and out walked the forces of Ameth and the Nightmares waiting there. So with that said, the 4 horsemen, the White Sword, the 100, the Summoners, and the rest of the demons come pouring out and ready to wage war. So with the enemy at their gates, Port Prometheus is now ground zero for the battle that would shape the fate of Arako. So with that said, issue number 15 of X-Men Red comes to an end. And let me just say, this was a solid issue that set up the war to come perfectly. And I also have to address how I enjoyed the Fisher King's backstory and is looking forward on seeing the rest. Because I have a feeling that there is more left to explain. And when it comes to Genesis's strategic mind, that was a great play hiding the gate within the beast. And to be honest, I don't really see a way out for our heroes without the help of Apocalypse or something of that magnitude. And just as a fan, I would also like to think that Uranos is still on the table as a tool to be used in this battle, just saying. So down in the comment section below, let me know your thoughts about this issue and what predictions you could have moving forward. So with that established, I hope you enjoyed this video, and please don't forget to leave a like and a comment if you want to see more videos like this. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next review.